Namaskar. Today, in our program on Gandhian studies, we go to the module on Mahatma Gandhi's concept of education. We call it Nayi Talim, that is new education or basic education. And as you all know, Mahatma Gandhi is the father of our nation, apostle of peace and non-violence, crusader against injustice in any form, and he is the inspiration to many social movements around the world and also for the liberation movements around the world. He had touched every aspect of human life. I would like to say that there is no aspect of human life untouched by Mahatma Gandhi. So his work for the liberation of the country is only one part of his contribution, but he has contributed to a number of aspects in our lives, whether it is agriculture, whether it is education, health, social life, political life, and various things like that. So he has dealt with the subject of education in a very profound way. And he started his experiments on education way back in 1904. He started these experiments on education with his own children when he was in South Africa. In 1904, he started Phoenix Settlement, or the first ashram of Mahatma Gandhi. So in that ashram, the experimentations were also including the educational field. And you know, Gandhi's message that my life is my message and be the change you wish to see in this world. Now, Gandhi said, I do not want my house to be walled in all sides and my windows to be stuffed. I want the cultures of all the lands to be blown about my feet as freely as possible. But I refuse to be blown off my feet by any. That means I am not a narrow-minded person, I am a broad-minded person. I welcome all ideas. I may not agree with every idea of that kind, but still I welcome all these ideas. So I would like to listen to people, I would like to listen to ideas, and I will judge those ideas by my own standards. So he is not a narrow-minded, he is not confined, but he is extremely broad-minded. So when it comes to the question of learning, Gandhi gave a very important message that persistent questioning and healthy inquisitiveness are the first requisite for acquiring learning of any kind. So unless you have that questioning attitude, persistent questioning, I want to know, I want to learn, and healthy inquisitiveness, I want to learn, I want to understand more and more. So this is the basic attitude for acquiring learning of any kind. Inquisitiveness should be tempered by humility and respectful regard for the teacher. Unless there is humility, if your mind is overtaken by arrogance, by conceit, perhaps we cannot receive the new ideas. You think whatever ideas you have got, whatever learning you had, it is the ultimate. Therefore, we should have humility when we understand, when we try to learn, and we should also have a respectful regard for the teacher. There can be no knowledge without humility and the will to learn. That's what Gandhi said. So perhaps I would think this is the foundation of the Nayi Talim concept, or the concept of education that Mahatma Gandhi contributed. Now, Gandhi said the education of the child begins with conception. Normally, we think when the child is born and the child goes to school at the age of 5, that's and that's when the education of the child begins. But for Gandhi, it is not at the time of 5 years of age, even at the time of conception, when the baby is born in the womb. When the baby is conceived in the womb, from that point of time onwards, when the child is in mother's womb, the education process starts. So the education of the child begins with conception. The physical and mental states of the parents at the moment of conception are reproduced in the baby. What a great understanding, what a great link Gandhi had given, that the attitudes, the temperaments, the feelings, the good, bad kind of things in the father and mother who were responsible for giving life to this new child, whatever had been their mental status, that will influence the child, and the child is an outcome of the attitudes and the status of mind, status of their body, all of that comes in the form of the child. Then, during the period of pregnancy, it continues to be affected by the mother's mood. Once the conception is done, the child remains in the mother's womb for about 9 months. So during the 9 months of pregnancy, the child is continuing to be affected by the mother's moods, desires, temperament, as also by her ways of life. After birth, the child imitates the parents, and for a considerable number of years, entirely depends on them for its growth. So we learn by imitation. The immediate knowledge for us is the parents. And when the child takes birth, it is a father, it is a mother who are in front of the child, and the child tries to imitate the father, tries to imitate the mother. It is through imitation the learning process starts right at the time of birth. Now, in any education process, Gandhi emphasized that we should use handicrafts as a medium of education. Because learning is always from known to the unknown. We know something, from this known, we just go on to something which is unknown to us. That's the learning process. So education through handicrafts is very essential. But you should know how to use your hands and feet to do something productive. So while doing, you get yourself involved, your body, mind, spirit, everything is involved in that process. Then the learning becomes very quick. You learn a lot of things. So it lay in the application of truth and love in every variety of human activity. It is the human activity which is a learning process for us. We learn from activity. Learning and activity cannot be separated. Therefore, it is the medium of handicraft which is very important to learn. So whether it is in the individual life or corporate one, the notion of education through handicraft rose from the contemplation of truth and love permeating life's activities. So Gandhi brings in the concept of love, the concept of truth into education. And how do you show love? When I take an activity through handicrafts, so I produce something, so I'm creating something, I'm producing something, and when I create something, my heart, my soul, everything is linked into what I produce. So it is a love and a truth which happen to be the underlying features in the education process. So handicrafts happen to be very, very essential. Then love required that true education should be easily accessible to all and should be of use for every villager in his daily life. So our purpose of education is to be useful for every single individual, whether a person is in a village, is an handicraft person, or in the town dweller, whoever it is, how the process of education is useful to the individual. And it should be useful for every villager in the daily lives. So the daily lives, what we are doing and what we learn in the process of education, again, they cannot be separated. So education and our daily lives are very much connected. But please look at the present day education, what we study in the school or in the college, in nowhere relevant to what I do. In fact, many people may do engineering and take a job in a bank. So these two are not connected. But whereas for Gandhi, the important thing is education should be useful in the daily lives and daily activities of every day. So that is the true education. Such education was not derived from, nor did it depend upon books. So it is not the physical books that you read and learn and acquire knowledge, but you study from the book of life, the book of society. So every single incident, every single animal, bird or a tree or a grass, whatever it is, every moment is a learning opportunity if you have the open-mindedness to acquire knowledge from every single incident. So Gandhi's approach was the open-mindedness of the child, the learning process, how to learn, how to improve your learning is the emphasis, so that if that ability to learn exists in the child, so in any situation, in any movement, from any particular activity, he would learn and continue to learn. So it is not books alone. Books are one source of knowledge. But for Gandhi, the entire knowledge does not depend on books. But as I said, it is the book of life, the book of society, book of daily living. It is that which will give you the knowledge and also the wisdom. So it was learned from the book of life, which cost nothing and which could not be taken away from one by any force on the earth. So the knowledge, the wisdom you gain in this process of studying the book of life, book of knowledge, book of society, that cannot be taken away by anybody, any force on this earth, because you acquired by the hard way, original way, natural way, you have acquired this knowledge. Now, Gandhi also talks about I hold that the true education of the intellect can only come through proper exercise and training of the bodily organs. A very, very important point as to what education is all about. So what is education? It is the true education of the proper intellect can only come through a proper exercise and training of the bodily organs. That is hands, feet, eyes, ears, nose, etc. In other words, an intelligent use of the bodily organs in a child provides the best and quickest way of developing his intellect. Unless you know how to use your hands, unless you know how to use your feet. In fact, in our education system currently, they start with writing an alphabet. And how does the child understand the meaning of an alphabet? So Gandhi talks about whatever birds the child is seeing, whatever objects the child is seeing, let us start with that. So it need not be the alphabet, but he can draw something that the child likes. So how to use the hand, how to use the feet, then how to hear, how to see, how to taste. So whatever organs of sense organs we have, how to train them. So, but unless the development of the mind and body goes hands in hand with a corresponding awakening of the soul, the former alone would prove to be a poor and lopsided affair. So, Gandhian concept of education is to take the balance between the learning and use of the bodily organs. So, body and mind, along with that the spirit or the soul. So the education, as Gandhiji has put it, has three broad components: body, mind and spirit or soul. That is, a person should be physically strong. So if you have got an educational system or a process for about 10 years or 15 years, the child who passes through this education system should emerge as a strong and healthy person. He should have endurance. He should have stamina. He should not be tired just like that. Just in walking in a sun, he should not get giddy. Therefore, the child's endurance, child's health, child's stamina are very important. This is one component in the education. The second component is the mind, the sharpening of the intellect. How can you improve your memory? How can you improve your retention? How can you improve your words? Or how do you improve your language? How do you improve your science? How do you improve your understanding of the surroundings like geography, things like that? So the intellect should be very sound. The third component is the child also should be with a good soul, with a good spirit. He should be a good human being. A person having a lot of knowledge, a lot of skills, without values becomes a demon, a threat to the mankind. Therefore, we should have a good-hearted, kind-hearted people. So to make an individual a kind-hearted person is also a process of education. But unless the development of the mind and body goes hands in hand with the corresponding awakening of the soul, just to have education is not sufficient. So we have seen in our education system the various faculties of body, mind and soul, we are not connected. In the present day education, we have not connected these three important points of body, mind and soul. When we have not connected these three in the education system, what kind of result would be is obvious. They are all around us. Only we have lost perception of them owing to our perserve association. We have not studied, we have not understood what is happening to our children. When these three faculties are combined in them, they will emerge as a wholesome, full, complete man or a woman. It is that completeness which is missing in the present day education. So Gandhi's approach to education involves not only the physical bodily education or bodily training, but also the intellectual sharpening. But the third, as I said, it is also the soul, or to have spiritual training. And Gandhi said, by spiritual training, I mean education of the heart. That's what I said. A person should be a good-hearted, kind-hearted person. A proper and all-round development of the mind, therefore, can take place only when it proceeds pari passu with the education of the physical and spiritual faculties of the child. They constitute an indivisible whole. That is the concept broadly of Gandhi in terms of education. But now when we see the current day education in the schools, what is happening, if we analyze, on the other hand, what goes on by the name of education in our schools and colleges is only intellectual dissipation. We make the children sit on the benches in the classroom and keep on talking, keep on hammering a lot of things. We try to stuff a lot of things into the minds of the students. So intellectual training is there looked upon as something altogether unrelated to manual or physical work. Because in our education system, we have forgotten the need, the importance of physical exercise. But when I say physical exercise, it is not the routine, non-productive physical exercise, but this physical exercise should be productive, which can build the human being's body and his health, and along with that, he should be confident of using the body organs of hands and feet. So intellectual training is there looked upon as something altogether unrelated to manual or physical work. But since the body must have some sort of physical exercise to keep it in health, they vainly try to attain that, and by means of artificial and otherwise barren system of physical culture, which would be ridiculous beyond words if the result was not so tragic. So the physical work also should be integrated into the education system, not as something that is to be done for the sake of that, like some kind of drills they do in the evening after the main school teaching hours. And it is not that kind of thing, but it should be integrated and intertwined into the education system. So the young man who emerges from this system of education in no way compete in physical endurance with an ordinary laborer. We see so many young people from the schools coming out, but when you compare them with an ordinary laborer who can really work for about 8 hours even in a hot summer without having any problem. But when we compare our students with them, you can't compare them in terms of physical stamina or physical energy. The slightest physical exertion gives them a headache. Can you see any young boy or girl emerging from a school or college, work for a short while, maybe 10 minutes, they get headache. A mild exposure to the sun is enough to cause them giddiness. And what is more, all this is looked upon as if it is a natural. See, when a human being, we are a natural person here on this earth, should we not have enough physical strength, capacity to walk in the sun? So unless the bodies are prepared to do some physical work, not physical exercise, but physical work, and even in the sun, in the open. So what is this education for? And we think it is very natural that for a student to work in the sun or to do some physical work is very difficult. So what a wrong concept it is. As for the faculties of the heart, they are simply allowed to run, to seed or to grow anyhow in a wild, undisciplined manner. We never train the heart in a systematic way. The result is moral and spiritual anarchy. And it is regarded as something laudable. So this is how we try to keep ourselves happy, commend ourselves, thinking that the present day education is okay. But in reality, the present day education is far from being realistic and useful. Therefore, the Gandhi's concept of education is working through handicrafts from knowing to the unknown. And Gandhi was using charkha, the spinning wheel, to learn, to understand. Because everyone is wearing clothes, we know. And a cloth requires yarn. And when you are using the charkha to produce yarn, so how many twists you will give to the thread? When you are drawing from the cotton the thread on the charkha, so there is one wheel, another wheel and a third wheel at 3 levels. So one rotation you do will give you multiple revolutions at the second level and perhaps several hundreds of times more at the third level. So how much of twist you give for 1 meter long yarn? So it is mathematics. So what is the length? What is the twist? What will give it the strength? If you give more twist, it will break. If it is less twist, you can't survive that thread. Therefore, it is mathematics. Then when you do the weaving, how many lengths and how many width you have and how do you weave? So that is again another science. Then you are going to color the cloth, dyeing the cloth. And in the dyeing the cloth, you are using natural colors. And natural colors, where do they come from? Some come from the flowers or the plant, some from the seeds, some from the leaves, some from the bark. That is, you are learning the whole botany. You take a plant, you look at the leaf, you look at the flower, you take the seeds, that is the fruit or whatever it is, then the bark, this stem. So various parts of the plant, you are extracting the required colors, so you are studying botany. Similarly, when you want to produce cotton, where can you produce cotton? If you take India, where is cotton grown? It is normally grown in the black cotton soils. Where are the black cotton soils? Yes, Maharashtra has some. In Andhra Pradesh, some areas produce cotton. Like that in different areas. And where do you weave? You weave in place where there is more humidity because the thread should not be broken. So you study geography in that process. So from the known activity, an activity where the child is involved, you can teach them botany, you can teach them geography, you can teach them mathematics, you can teach them physics, and many things like that. Which means the learning becomes very natural, very simple. You are not conscious that you are learning botany. You are not conscious you are learning physics. So it becomes a natural process and the child's learning is very, very simple. So this is how Gandhi was talking about the concept of education, and we will continue on this further. Thank you. Namaskar.